Today we've got the Maiden flight on the Freewing J10 90mm. Let's take a look at an overview of the jet and also the equipment we're using, and we'll get this bird in the air. You'll notice we've got the polyacrylic Minwax on this jet. Really makes the white and the red stand out and actually gives you a deeper blue. So definitely looks good with the added polyacrylic on this one. You'll notice that it's got lights everywhere, navigation lights on the wings, navigation light on top. All three of those are solid. You have a flashing beacon on the top of the vertical, and you've got a solid light on the back. Two lights solid down on the bottom of the fuselage around the air intake. And the coolest thing about the lights on this jet is the 3 landing gear lights. So when we come in on final, that definitely should help with orientation and looks really cool with all 3 of those lights. You'll notice that we've got the main gears, the nose gear, and the wheels and tires painted white. So nice little touch to implement the white on the paint scheme. And the last light to talk about is the one under the canopy. It's got the heads-up display for the pilot. We're using the Radiomaster TX16S with AG01 gimbals today. Let's take a look at the equipment in the plane. And something to note on that light, it's got the contact point on the bottom, and then we've got the post down there in the fuselage. So what happens is when you put this canopy on, it makes contact, and that's what allows the heads-up display to light up, so you don't actually have to plug and unplug a connector every time. We're running the SMC 6S 5900 HV2. That's their newest high voltage pack. We've got the Spectrum AR637TA. They came out of a plane, so we unlocked it, flashed it, and put some default values in. We've got one antenna going across underneath the latch, and we've got one antenna going this way for a 90-degree. Got the shelf liner in the bottom. You'll notice the battery is actually up a little ways. We got about 3 inches we can move it back. We've balanced it on the Book CG, so we'll see how that goes on the maiden flight here. A lot of times the Book CGs are nose heavy. However, that'll give us a starting point, and as we get it dialed in, we can move it back. We'll get the AS3X gains dialed in as well. So we've talked about this bird long enough. Let's get it in the air. J10 Dragon on deck. Let's go. Power up. One. Climb out. Came up pretty quick for a Delta. Didn't use all the runway. However, that's to be expected. Most of these Deltas, they come up like that when you're not got the trim set correctly. And it looks like we're going to need a little bit of roll and a little bit of pitch trim. We're going to make a pass through here and see how close we are on the trim. Still want to roll to the right just a little bit, so we need just a little bit more trim to the left. We should be okay. One thing I noticed about that first pass, this bird sounded really good. So, all right, let's bring it around again. Should be pretty close on the trim dialed in. And I noticed coming around that turn, it was kind of wanting to nose down quite a bit. So definitely going to move the battery back. And I can tell just slow flying around here that the battery is definitely going to need to be pushed back just from the way it's flying, slow speed too. All right, now let's put the gyro in. I did just a little roll test right there to see how it felt with the gyro. Oh yeah, it's definitely handling the nose down attitude coming through, and let's do a pass right here. Felt really good on the default values we're using. However, we will get those tuned in for the flight review. Roll rate seemed okay, not super aggressive. However, we're not going very fast either. Overall, feels like the plane's flying pretty good, just need a few adjustments. A little flyby right there, and this plane really feels good flying as far as stability. It's been a while since I've flown a Delta Wing. However, they're always fun to fly because of how maneuverable they are and how slow you can fly them. Paint scheme looks pretty good in the air. A few times when going around here, it's a little hard to see on the orientation though. All right, seems pretty good. We got the gear down. We got 3 in the green. So let's try to bring it in. I'll slow it down right here. About 30% power. pull the nose up a little bit just to slow down a hair. Now we're going to start letting it come around, the nose down, about 30% power. Power off for just a second. Slowing it down. Now I'm going to get back on the power and set it down. The reverse thrust worked really well right there. You can see at our runway down on the end, it got a little rough and tried to tip over. However, I noticed on the takeoff, the rudder was a little sensitive. So I'm going to turn that down for the sensitivity on the nose wheel steering. And overall, I feel like it flew pretty good. So let's take it back over the bench, look at the battery and the post-flight results. Now we've got the maiden flight completed on the Freewing J10 90mm. Let's talk about some things I noticed in the air and some adjustments we're going to make moving forward. You'll notice that when we took off, went straight down the runway, I was very easy on the rudder because this one does seem to have a fair amount of weight sway left to right, so it looks like it could tip over fairly easy. But we took it down the center line, lifted out, and like most Delta wings, it has that initial little jump off the ground. So you want to be careful when you're maiden flight until you get the pitch trimmed in, because they will want to jump off the ground fairly aggressively. So be careful when you're pulling up on the pitch and lifting out. Once we got it up in the air, pulled the gear up, we need a little bit of pitch and roll trim. Once we got that lined out, it was flying good. It felt really well. I will say that I did notice that it was fairly nose heavy when we slowed down and got into some slow flight and a maiden flight. So we're definitely going to be moving that battery back for future flights. Two things I want you to note when you are taking a maiden flight. One is this paint scheme, depending on the day that you're flying it, it can be hard to see as far as visibility. The other thing that can make it a little bit harder is this plane can get out there fast. I'm going to tell y'all right now, this jet is a fast bird. So be careful. Two reasons. One, getting it out and flying it a long ways out, it can be a little bit harder to see, especially with this paint scheme. And number two is you're going to eat up some of the battery. This system that they have in these birds, you definitely want to be light on, especially if you're running a 5,000 or a 5,500. Now if you go with something like a 5,900 or 6,000, you know, you can open it up a little bit more, but just be cautious on that because it will eat the battery more than you probably think. And also this bird is fast and can get out there. So just, you know, mentioned that a few times. I just really want you to understand that when you're taking this up from maiden flight. Speaking of battery consumption, we were up a little bit over 3 minutes. Let's take a look and see what we had on this one. So looking at the battery, as I mentioned, this is the SMC 5900 HV2. We're at 382, 383 across the board, 41%. So if we had to go around a few times, we could have and still been okay. Last thing to be aware of, you'll notice that when we came in on final, that it started slowing down and got fairly slow. I wouldn't say as slow as probably this jet could land, and it really started to sink. So the thing you want to watch out for on that is this bird has a fast sink rate, probably one of the highest I've seen out of jets. So definitely something to be cautious about when landing. Brought it in, sat it down, went down the runway here, put the reverse thrust on, and I'm going to tell you that's where this shines on a smaller runway. We got a 330-foot runway, put that reverse thrust in, open the power up, and this thing slowed down great. So definitely a big advantage with this one on smaller runways. As we get it tuned in and get a little bit more time on it, we'll still be able to bring it in slower and not even have to use a reverse thrust as much. However, it was definitely effective on this jet. So takeaways is when you're taking off, be careful on the climb out. Don't let it get too aggressive off the ground. Be careful with visibility because of how fast this jet is. And also, it's not the biggest jet with a Delta wing, and the paint scheme. So be careful on the days that you pick to fly this because the visibility can be a little bit harder than probably what you would expect. And the last thing is when you're coming in, be careful on final. When you're slowing down, coming down to the runway, this thing does have a fairly aggressive sink rate. As I mentioned, that'll probably get better as we dial it in because also we're going to move the battery back because it is fair amount of nose heavy. The CG is pretty far forward even with that stock setup. So if you like the maiden flight we did today, go ahead and give us a thumbs up on the video. You want to see the flight review or other flight reviews, go ahead and subscribe to the channel while you're here. I appreciate y'all watching, and I'll see you on the next one.